So this is Ella Oliver, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on the consonants M and N, and this is for CSD 232 for Professor Banks. So to begin, these are nasal consonants. So this means that they are produced while the mouth is closed and the velum is lowered, which allows the breath stream to flow into the nasal cavity. The sound source is the vibration of the vocal folds, and the resonance varies since the size of the oral cavities are going to be different amongst the different nasal consonants during their production. Since the mouth is closed during the production, there is no release of the intraoral pressure from the oral cavity. Something also to know is that the articulators block the flow of air out of the oral cavity so that the airstream can flow continuously through the nasal cavity. This does result in nasals having a sound quality that is quite different from other phonemes. And something also to note is that nasal consonants are considered sonorants, which, according to the book, the definition is that they are produced with resonance occurring throughout the entire vocal tract. They are produced with little constriction in the vocal tract and as well with little turbulence in the airstream as it passes through the oral cavity. So, in other words, this just means that the acoustic vibrations are continually flowing into the nasal cavity. The first one I'm going to be discussing is M. The place of articulation for this is bilabial. The manner is, of course, a nasal, and something to know is that all nasal consonants are voiced, so hence M is voiced. Some rules for transcription is that sometimes it could be considered syllabic in conversation. Some examples of M I found were money, morals, and married. Another thing to note about M is that it is the most anterior. The resonating cavity is the largest of the ones I'm going to be discussing. So this includes the entire oral cavity. This extends from the lips all the way to the oral pharynx. The next one I'm going to be discussing is N. The place of articulation for N is alveolar. The manner, again, is nasal, and it is voiced. Some rules for when you are transcribing M is that when it occurs at the end of a word and then the preceding consonant is an alveolar homoorganic obstruent like D, T, S, or the backwards question mark. Most of the time, this results with N becoming the nucleus of the syllable. So I found a great example of this in the book, and it used the word written, which I typed out for the slide. And then the transcription, you can see that when you say it, that the N is the nucleus in this syllable. N is the second most anterior out of the three I will be discussing, and the place of articulation is posterior to that for M. So the oral cavity is slightly smaller than what it would look like when you were producing M. And also, too, homoorganic just means that phonemes share the same place of articulation. Some examples of N would be nothing, knowing, and never. And then I also included the transcription to the right of it. And I also decided to include the Special N or the NG in words is what it represents. So a good example would be using like singing. It's the NG in that sound. The place of articulation for this is velar. Again, the manner is it's a nasal, and it is voice, just like the other two examples. Some rules for when you are transcribing this is that it can never begin a word in English. It can only be found in the middle or at the end of the word. So, with that being said, it could have the possibility of becoming syllabic when it follows a homorganic velar obstruent, such as K or G. And I found these in the book, and it was a great explanation. And also, something to note is that it is impossible to say or transcribe words with using the regular N instead of the correct fancy N that represents the NG. And out of the three, it is the most posterior. So between the back of the tongue and the anterior of the portion of the velum, and sometimes the posterior portion of the hard palate. Some examples of N are strongly, fangs, length, and then the transcription is to the right. My first question is, which consonant is the most posterior out of the three discussed? The answer to that is the special N, or the NG sound in words. My second question is, what does homorganic mean? The answer, as stated during the presentation, it just means that the phonemes share the same place of articulation. And my third and final question is, are nasals considered obstruents or sonorants? The answer to this would be that they are considered to be sonorants, which means that they are produced with resonance occurring throughout the entire vocal tract. And then these are just my sources for this presentation. Thank you so much.